Everybody should be muted. It's being recorded, and I will start by saying, welcome to the virtual Marxist Library, and welcome to Sunday morning at the library. My name is Gene Rule, and I'm one of the small group of nameless volunteers that put on the program. And this Sunday morning is a project of the Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library. The library was formed to further the library's goal of preserving our written heritage as well as supporting emerging struggles for racial and gender equality and for socialism. The members of ICSS are active in different aspects of people's struggles in the Bay Area and globally. Some of us are affiliated with specific political parties and tendencies, others are not. We respect one another, but we do not necessarily agree on all issues. Accordingly, the opinions expressed in our lectures, workshops, and publications are those of the authors only and do not represent any kind of group consensus on the issues discussed. We are united, however, in our respect for the work of Karl Marx and our belief that this work will remain as important for the class struggles of the future as they have been for the past. As a group, we continue to draw inspiration from the work of Karl Marx, including his 11th thesis on Feuerbach. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it. So with that, we can start our program. As I understand it, we blurbed this, we're going to go around the virtual room and take 2 or 3 minutes. I guess 2 would probably be better, but we could, that's up to the moderator, who I believe is going to be Mehmet. And talk about
no,
this.
I think it's going to be Raj.
Okay.
And in the meantime, let me just for technical, how to do this is that we could mute everybody, and then people could raise hands. If you look at the chat or the participants at the bottom, everybody could see raise hands. And we could give, the microphone to those people who have raised hands. Or we can ask people to mute themselves and then unmute if they want to speak, but be respectful of others who are speaking. I don't know how people would like to comment on that. Or Raj, he's going to be the moderator. So how Raj feels about that?
Well, I think people should speak briefly. 2 minutes is something I will monitor. And if they're going over 2 minutes, I will let them know, and they should then wrap it up within 10, 15 seconds. So I'll let them know you're approaching 2 minutes, and then in about 20 seconds, they should end their thing. That will be fair to everybody.
Somebody doesn't see the raise hand button. He needs to be told that there is a sentence at the bottom of the participants list that says raise your hand.
Correct. Thank you, Norma. Yes, that's a good sign. Look at the participants list. It is at the bottom of your screen. It says manage participants. That's going to bring up the participants list. And when you look at that little window that comes up at the bottom, you should have raise hand button where you click on it and we immediately see a hand going on and we can give it to that. So does that mean, Raj, that we mute everybody and just give the microphone to those? Or should we ask people to mute themselves and then just, speak when, when it's their turn?
Let's try not muting anybody right now, or not everybody, and assume that people be self-disciplined. So they only raise hands before they want to talk. But I think it'd be, because Norma said muting everybody is kind of harsh, and I think let's try it without doing it for now. If it
Good
doesn't
for
work,
me.
too much interruption, yeah. So I would respect Norma's comment and just go with the self-discipline as the thing. So who wants to go first?
Well, Jane, I can go first.
Go ahead, Gene. I'll start your
I've
timer.
started. And let's see. Let me just put my time. I can't quite put it on. Anyway, well, yeah, we conceived this as an opportunity to get together, share our experiences, talk about where we are in terms of coping with the crisis, and any political ideas we have, and try to limit it to 2 minutes so everybody gets a chance to talk. Let everybody talk once first before we start a second round. That's what I understood. So I just say that personally, I'm in a fairly good place. It's depressing in a lot of ways, I think upsetting to have this crisis on us so soon after we had the fires here in California. So that's upsetting. Personally, I'm in a good place because my son and his family and 2 granddaughters live right above me, and they take good care of me. They won't let me out of the house practically. And my son brought down some killer pork chops last night. So I'm doing okay personally in coping with this. And I'm glad we have this Sunday morning group because it's an important source of comfort, both personally and politically for me. And politically, I think this is a time of, I think, very intense struggle going on because we know Trump and the people he represents are going to try to make the most of this. We already see that happening. And we need to get prepared to respond. As you know, since 2015, I've been a very strong supporter of Bernie Sanders and the whole Bernie movement, and I continue to do so. But, and I talked a little bit about that last week. So,
Gene, you are approaching 2 minutes.
no, I'm not approaching, I'm there, so I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Okay, Rich Johnson raised his hand, so Rich, please go ahead. Rich, go ahead.
Gotta press his buttons.
I haven't, he's unmuted.
Sorry, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. I thought I was in. I thought I pressed the off the.
That's okay,
But-
just talk.
Okay, so anyway, Kit and me are sitting here on another. Well, she's been home for a couple of weeks, so and has to go back to work soon. So that's been kind of special, and we've gone out very little, except basically to shop for food. I think pretty much it. And she was going to take the bus yesterday and let me just sleep in. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a bit of it. It sounded like I lost it. So when I say that, it just means I'm fishing to make sure I didn't really lose the signal. So anyway, yesterday she went out in the morning, early in the morning. So like after 6 days to get the bus that was supposed to be there. And typically it's supposed to be on schedule. But it
Rich,
was
your
not.
voice is.
And it said at some point she finally was.
His voice is getting
Hello?
garbled.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just.
You can't use speaker.
I'm sorry.
You can't use speaker.
Am I? Oh, you can't.
No.
Okay. Didn't know that. I don't know. Give me one second here. I can't get to where that is at right now. Well, anyway, I'm gonna. Can you hear me now?
It's garbled.
Can you call in with the microphone, just using your cell phone with a telephone connection, Rich?
Maybe, but I can't think straight right now. I'm standing up in a room where it's good signal, but it's not very comfortable. And I don't know if I'd make that. Let me, If you're not hearing
Okay.
me, I should just stop.
Okay, I'm
Uh,
going to suggest that we go to next person while he figures it out. Guru Jivan started, he raised his hand. So I'm going to go to Guru Jivan.
I was just telling Rich that I could hear him, but I'll go. I'm interested in the social implications of the stay-at-home policy versus the widespread testing that you see in Germany or Iceland, and I see a lot of. I haven't seen a lot in like the leftist press about it, and it's kind of concerning to me. For example, the work from home policy, if you can even get it, which is great. I suspect that we're never going to go back to how it was before because, you know, if you're working at home, there's no boundary and you get more surplus value extracted, right? And also what they call non-essential businesses. I just want to raise the question. Essentially, that means practically that we're going to be shopping on Amazon and they increase their monopoly power. And so I'm interested in a lot of like the deleterious effects of a lot of this. You know, there's the public health policy, but then there's these other issues that are independent of that. You know, they will have consequences. And so I'm interested in analyzing that. So that's my thing.
Okay, thank you. So who's next? Anybody wants to comment on this or say something? I'll just say that I was looking at this healthdata.org. I don't know how many people here have gone to that. That has statistics about the curve, etc. It looks like it's about a 2-month thing. So it's tied into Guru Jivan's comment. So California, so basically the month of April and May are going to be somewhere in April. There is going to be a peak in the next week to 10 days. And then this peak sort of varies depending on which state you are in. But it's sort of like within the next 2 weeks and then starts declining with all the measures of stay at home or shelter at home program. Now, which is having a huge impact, as Guru Jivan pointed out. It doesn't impact me so much because I'm already retired. Many people in this list are. But those who are working and have to earn a living and have to pay rent and do all these things, they are going to get a 1-month check, and then there is the unemployment compensation, which will make them whole for a short time. But then there is the other aspects that Guru Jivan pointed out, the monopoly power growing on us. Yes, I think that's basically, it's going to destroy a lot of small business. And a lot of people will then will be dependent more and more on monopoly thing. That's certainly eventually where it will end, I don't know, but that's my comment anyway. So who wants to go next?
Raj, may I?
Yes, of course.
Okay. We are seeing the health side of this, and we are seeing, as Gurjiba said, you know, like we're being tucked to our homes and monopoly shopping and everything. But there is a larger picture than this, and I don't think I'm seeing much discussion on this, is that it is the fear mongering and the consequences of this fear mongering. Fascist systems first start with scaring people and then accepting of losing freedoms. As we can see, they already started about freezing our rights in the Constitution. And when, the more the fear goes, people are going to be so scared that, again, like 9/11, they're going to start saying, yes, take away anything, just keep me alive, just, for the sake of the public health, let's give up anything we have. So that is a very scary side. And I'm seeing this not only in the United States, but, my country, Turkey, has already implemented this. 65 years old, and those who are less than, younger than 20 years old are not allowed to leave their home. And when they do, my God, the attacks on them are scary. People are ganging up on the older people as if they had started this whole thing, and the government is getting away with it. And I can talk about the other, measures that the government is bringing, but let's be aware that our rights are going to be taken away if we start accepting these measures.
Thank you. So well within time. So next person.
I raised
Comment?
my hand.
Sharon? Yeah, go ahead, please, Sharon.
Thank you. This week I suddenly thought, oh, now I understand what Marxists have said for a long time, that the petty bourgeoisie can be an ally or an enemy of the working class. And that if we want to have a broad united front, we have to get the petty bourgeoisie on our side. And the petty bourgeoisie is the small business people. And yes, we need to fight for their survival, whether it's the local food truck or the local restaurant or professionals who work for themselves, whoever is, we have a very large petty bourgeoisie in this country. And I felt good that I finally understood that in a visceral way. And I agree about the thing about rights. The governor, when the governor announced the stay-at-home policy, he suspended the Brown Act, which means that public institutions like city councils and school boards do not have to meet in public and provide the public with ways to express opinions at meetings. And so they are very happy to drop that. And it's very scary. This Oakland School Board voted this week to close a number of schools that we had been fighting to keep open, and they just went ahead and did it. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Very well within time. So who's next? Who would like to say something?
I just say a word, petty, that's spelled P-E-T-I-T-E, petty, not P-E-T-T-Y.
Thank you, teacher.
Hey, don't say that. I think badly enough of teachers without you putting it on to my, who I am.
Thank you, comrade teacher.
No, comrade's sufficient.
Okay, sorry, just.
You gotta,
Humor, that was humor.
yeah, it's not funny. As that great comic said,
Okay.
not funny.
Okay, who's next? Who wants to go next? Okay, Cajun, no to everyone, section of
Mr.
HR.
Kallenbaum is raising his hand.
I raised my hand physically.
Okay, go.
Well, I'm in this little bit in the same situation as Jean. I'm being well taken care of, and feel fairly secure. And so far, I haven't suffered any symptoms of the disease. About the general situation, what struck me, a couple of things. It becomes evident from the way the lockdown is proceeding. We start to get a picture of how few people it actually needs to run the society. You know, the people who run the public utilities, the distribution of food and other things is a relatively small number. And you know, we live in a society of enormous abundance, where people are running around working hard, 2 jobs, and it's completely unnecessary. And I think it's going to become evident to people. You know, we can cut the work hours in half and organize it better under socialism, and people could live a good life now with the current level of production. And I think that people are going to start getting a sense of that. And then the other thing, and I hope Alan will talk about it next week, is the enormous amount of money that's being added to the economy. You know, there's the money is supposed to be a device for distributing goods and services and labor and so forth, but it's become completely distorted. And the relationship of the money to the real economy has become more and more unstable. And you know, this crisis is
Please wrap it up because your 2 minutes are up.
okay.
No, you can wrap it up. Take time to wrap it up. You can.
No, I think I said enough.
Okay. Who's next? We will go a little loose, so 15, 20 seconds extra is fine. When I say wrap it up, you can take 15, 20 seconds. So 30
Sharon
seconds.
has her hand up.
Okay. Who has it?
Sharon has her hand
Sharon,
up.
yeah, and Rich Johnson wants to join us. So Sharon, go ahead, please.
No, I already spoke.
Okay, all right.
Sorry,
So
I'm taking my hand
lower
down.
the hand. Okay. Who wants to go next? Okay, if nobody's going, I will tell you.
Karen and Alan have their hands up.
Okay, yes, Karen. I will go to Karen first and then Alan next. Karen, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was really interested in the comments that people were making about work and how this is affecting work. And this is anecdotal, but I think it's quite interesting. My friend who is from England was telling me about her sister who works for a bank, and she's in management. And the bank had previously implemented a system of observing what the employees were actually doing, how many telephone calls they were making, what they were doing on their computers, and the duration of the time that they were actually doing their job. And I think it was sort of quality assurance kind of thing, making sure that they were getting the most out of their employees. Well, my friend's sister, because she's in management, she still has access to this program that allows her to see what the people working under her are doing at home. And it's just interesting because she's noticed that there are some people who are doing no work at all. In fact, one guy, she said, logged on to his computer to indicate that he was working, but then forgot to turn it off and left it on until 4 o'clock the next morning and basically did nothing the entire time. And the employer then has also allowed people to work 2 hours of overtime that they're being paid double wages for. So anyway, my friend said her sister is actually thrilled with the situation because there's extra work and she's getting paid double time and putting away quite a bit of money. But anyway, I just thought that it was interesting.
Thank you, Karen. So we go to Alan, he's next.
Yeah, I have a question. Like everybody else, I've been very concerned with day-to-day survival and really wrapped up in the effects of the pandemic and what's going on. But one of the things that appears to be going on is that US imperialism is taking advantage of the situation and making aggressive moves towards Venezuela and Iran, at least as far as I've heard. And I was wondering if anybody had, this does not seem to be a coincidence or just an everyday occurrence. It's something it sounds like it's something that they're actually doing consciously, taking advantage of the situation. I was wondering if anybody had any information or thoughts about that.
Okay, So who wants to go next?
Can I ask him doing anything about what did I got distracted? What about Venezuela?
So the US is trying to take advantage of this situation and encircling them, putting
Well,
more pressure on.
that's
So
got to do with the article that I offered to send people
I
about the
thought-
Right,
details.
right.
of-
My question is a little bit broader. I mean, I think you're right,
Yeah.
that Norma, that's an example, but my sense is that there's something happening here in terms of them launching an initiative behind the worldwide, attention being focused on the pandemic, that they're taking aggressive actions. And the areas that I've heard of are potentially, well, in Venezuela for sure, and then potentially in Iran. And I'm wondering if people had heard anything about that.
they've declared Maduro a drug dealer. So I think they're trying to kill him or justify whatever they will do. So you're
I
right.
suggest that people ally with Code Pink, which is intent on stopping the blockades, the sanctions and blockades, just as an aside.
Okay. Who's next wants to comment on this or anything else or say something on their own? Richard Lipperman has joined us. Welcome.
Hi, I got here a little late, so I'm just listening right now.
Okay, and we have Adrian Aaron, who has not spoken, and Rich Johnson has reconnected with us, and David Campbell is there. So these people have not spoken. So anybody who has not spoken, you want to say now something before I go to anybody else?
Hey, Jay here.
Okay.
I just wanted to say a little bit about Venezuela. I think what we're seeing here is a redux of the Panama strategy. You indict somebody for a drug, trafficking,
Right.
and then you roll out the entire system. And it's a tremendous miscalculation because Venezuela is not Panama. And the president of Panama was a CIA agent, former CIA agent. So they had, his number. He was pretty easy to put down. But still, the risk is very, very serious. And same thing with Iran. I think if we think globally, we are facing a global catastrophe. And I refer people to Vijay Prasad's several essays that he's written about the plight of workers and the precarious communities around the world. Even locally, we have to think about, what's happening to the homeless, and also, communities where people don't have shelter. If you're being told to shelter in place, what does that mean if you cannot shelter? If public transportation is not working and you have no means of supporting yourself, and if you do have shelter, you are so closely packed together that you are putting yourself and others at risk. So these are large structural issues. I believe that we're looking at a kind of a global structural reconfiguration. If you look at the Financial Times, they're actually putting forth arguments that sound incredibly socialist. I mean, they're saying without saying it that capitalism is finished. I was also looking at Teen Vogue, believe it or not, and Teen Vogue has also come out with the same statement that capitalism is finished. So this is similar to some of the language that we saw after 2008. Again, the elite ruling classes said that, laissez-faire is finished. But I think this is much, much more serious. And again, it's the classical formula, do we move towards socialism or do we move towards barbarism? I think that
Jivan, your time is up.
Thank you.
Hey, Jivan, you're the theater artist, right? So I know you for a long time. Is that right?
Yeah, let me write
I
the
didn't know
rest
you
of
as
my
KJ
stuff
knows.
up.
So, yeah,
Let me
okay.
write the rest of my stuff up, and people can read my stuff if they want to.
Okay, Jivan, good to hear and good to see you. I mean, I don't see you, but good to see you here. Yeah, that's Jivan has opened up. One question I have for Jivan is, you keep tab on South Korea because you're from there, right? So how there you've described them as a fascist state, right? And although the fascist state was kind of overcome by struggle, do you have any comments on that, on South Korea and how they're dealing with this crisis? What are they doing? Just a question to you.
South Korea has still some of the structures, especially the legal structures of its fascist state. It's also a vassal state to the U.S. empire. But in the current moment, there is a progressive who is the president, and he's done actually a pretty extraordinary job of managing the virus outbreak. I mean, they were the first to do massive testing and the contact tracing, etc., outside of China. Essentially, they took the Chinese model and applied it, and they showed that it worked. So South Korea is doing well. Nobody wants to acknowledge that what China did was actually both what worked and what was necessary. But because there are other countries in the immediate vicinity, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, that have successfully stemmed the outbreak, now they are saying that, that these countries are models to emulate. Well, actually, this is the Chinese model. And again, this comes back to the global dimensions of this outbreak, which is that initially this was dismissed because it was seen as a communist coronavirus. If you recall, when it first started, there were massive articles saying that this is the Chinese Chernobyl. It presages or envisages the fall of the Chinese Communist Party. Communism doesn't work because it's not transparent and covers things up. We'll know all of this is false. And we see that what the Chinese have been doing is what countries all over the world need to replicate in order to survive and to stem the outbreak.
Thank you. Adrian Aaron is recognized. Adrian, please go.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. One of the things that I've been experiencing during this period is a feeling of extreme isolation. And so I'm feeling very glad.
Speak up a little bit. We can't hear you quite loud enough.
Yeah, sorry. I've been experiencing a feeling of great isolation during this time. And I'm appreciative of your making this meeting to bring us together this way. But in trying to combat the depression that comes with everything that we're experiencing, I've been looking, is there something positive that I can find in this? And the only thing around the isolation that I've seen that's helpful is how it alerts me to what people in prison who are put in solitary confinement go through when they're detached from all other human beings. We're social animals and we really need to be among people. And when that's taken away from us, it's a severe deprivation. So the one thing that I'm going to do as a move forward with this is to write letters to prisoners. I think that's something that I can do during this time. It can connect me into something that's important. So that's, I guess, my big challenge is finding things to work through the depression of it all in a positive manner. And so if people have things to contribute around that of what they've found is useful, I'd like to hear it, because maybe we can share that. And I hate to think with the libraries closed that we have to use Amazon more. Maybe we could check with each other about any book that we might be wanting to read. If somebody has it, we can exchange it rather than having to buy something. Just an idea. Okay, thank you again for making the meeting.
Thank you. Adrian, your expertise we might need for our group. So I hope you join us in future meetings. So who's next? Who wants to? Oh, Jean wants to say. Jean's hand is raised. Jean, please go. I'm going to step away for a minute. So Mehmet, could you do the monitoring and get somebody? I should be back in 2 minutes.
I will try. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think this is really turning out well, both in terms of personal connections and also the intellectual aspects. And I appreciate what Jiwon was saying. And it made me think about a book that was written by Andrew Gunder Frank some time ago called Reorient. And his thesis was that up until 1500, 1800, China was the center of the world, with the world economy. And all the plunder that we got from plundering South America, all that silver flowed into China because China was the workshop of the world. That was changed. But what's happening is kind of like a tectonic shift going on, because China is reemerging and Asia is reemerging as the center of the world economy, and there's no stopping this. And I link this into the fact that China is a socialist country. And if you look at China, it has a fundamentally different model about how to do things that we do in the West. And what's interesting is I also subscribe to Foreign Affairs, a think tank of the ruling class. And a lot of them are saying things like, well, the United States is clearly no longer the leader. Europe is going away from what Trump wants to do and linking closer to China. People are looking at the fact that the United States is the leadership of the United States is no longer accepted by most of the world. And many more people are looking to China as an example, partly in terms of their the way they're handling the crisis, the way they're helping people out in other countries, a whole series of things that means that, de facto, the leadership, people no longer look to the United States for leadership. They look to China. And I think that's a good thing, and we need to be very careful about accepting all the China bashing we see across the board, including people from like Bernie Sanders. That's his Achilles heel, I think. But at any rate, I just wanted to say that about that, and I'll be talking more about this as we go on in our discussions. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm back. And Mehmet, you can keep doing it.
No, please go ahead. I'm enjoying at least listening to without divided attention. All right.
Okay,
thanks.
so Jean's finished, and who wants to go next? Okay, while you think about it, David Campbell wants to go next. Oh, Richard Wallenbaum raised his hand.
Right.
And so, Richard, you want to go first? David, you want to go?
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm thinking back to earlier crises. So one that comes to mind is Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, where our response was insufficient and underwhelming, to say the least. And other countries, such as socialist countries such as Cuba, came to our aid readily, sending medical care and doctors and all the rest. And we're hearing some of those same offers now in this moment, whether it's medical supplies from China, and I suspect there are other countries that have reached out to us as well. In the past, I think we've thought or heard America characterized as the indispensable nation. It seems like we're sort of rapidly relinquishing that position. And just maybe if there's any comment or interest around what is it that allows a country or countries to not only be able to meet their own needs, but to have excess capacity, as it were, to meet the needs of, I would think at the very least, we would be able to be friendly and supportive of our neighbors to the north and to the south. So Canada and Mexico and Central American countries, I realize we have all sorts of border issues and disputes as we move our way south, but I would at least think that we would want to be friendly with Canada. Not the, you know,
Your
so
voice
that's,
is,
I'll leave it there.
there's a problem with your voice, David. So I'm going to
Yeah,
mute
I
you
think
for a moment.
David had an echo because I don't know if you are also, David, close to your computer or there was a feedback.
Feedback,
At
yeah.
the end, but other parts came pretty clear and good.
Okay, so we go to Richard Fallenbaum now.
Okay. Well, just want to continue one with Dave, the theme that David raised, and in connection with Venezuela. And, you know, I think it's true that the United States, particularly the military, has not done a lot for the population. They set up these field hospitals, they moved these hospital ships, but compared to what other countries have done in their country and internationally, the U.S. state and the U.S. military has been ineffective. And I don't think there's any danger, real possibility of the United States
There's echo for
launching an attack on Venezuela. Recently, they had to cancel big provocative exercises in Eastern Europe. They were going to transport 30 or 40,000 soldiers, and you know they can't use the military. The military would revolt, just like that captain in the aircraft carrier who said, you know, who was complaining about how the top brass was treating the sailors in the aircraft carrier, and wouldn't provide them with adequate service. You know, the military is not good. The rank and file soldiers are concerned right now about their health and the health of their families, and they're not going to participate in any military adventures. So, you know, while it's necessary to be cautious, I think it's more an expression of impotence coming from the Pompeo and Esper rather than strength. And thank you.
Good point. Okay, Richard Lipperman raises his hand.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's really true that if the United States is in demise, then a wounded animal can be very dangerous. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
In terms of Venezuela or Iran, we don't need, the way this country works, should there be an attack, it doesn't need the foot soldier. It will wreak enough havoc with just the Air Force from 30,000 feet up or whatever. The objective being to just totally destroy those countries' infrastructures even more. So that is a danger. You know, so I'm not so sure there's a dependency on the foot soldier anymore. What I'm wondering about is, since I came to it late, I don't know if you folks already talked about just the kind of neoliberal model that we have in this country that worships to a greater degree than a lot of other places the private sector and looks to the private sector to solve problems. And the private sector has proven very disjointed and disconnected. And when it even tries to help, it's all very capricious. So some companies, I hear like the NBA has donated 1 million masks. I probably have that number wrong. But that's a capricious kind of response. And the government is, especially under someone like Trump, is very loath to have government intervention, as he calls it, because it's just their ideology is so wrapped up in the market doing and everything it wants to do, and it's afraid to establish any precedent where the government really gets more involved in financial or social and public affairs. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Who wants to go next? Okay, I can tell you a little bit about, this is off this topic somewhat, situation in India, but I was going to speak at it another time, but this is developing in India, and their approach is to try to track down the source and quarantine everybody who came in touch with them, because people in India are living in close proximity, and now 60%, 55, 60% live in urban areas. A lot of them are poor. And when they shut down, they had a shutdown for 3 weeks or so. All of a sudden, the migrant workers, which are, I think, over 200 million or around 200 million, many of them decided to go to their villages because they come from villages. And that became a real disaster for a while. And first of all, they were even closely packed at the bus station. So in India, the situation is evolving. The second thing is this right-wing government is using anti-Muslim feelings among Hindu majority to consolidate power. This is how they have consolidated power. And they have a whole network of mass media that basically follows and goes on to blame Muslims for everything, including spread of coronavirus thing. So this is, I just want to tell you, this is a worrying picture emerging from India. The numbers are still very low in India, but you know, that's how it starts very low. And so this, if it spreads, it's going to be disaster. In 1918, so-called Spanish flu, which was actually started from Kansas, but got a Spanish flu name, that killed 18 million people in India, which was essentially somewhere between 6 to 8% of the then population of India. So this is a worrying trend that is developing. India is a large country with 1.3 billion people. So anyway, I will let me attend to this call. I'm done. Anybody who wants to can go next. Melody, I'm in a conference call. Can I call you back? Yeah, everything okay?
I can, I think, follow up on Raj's
I'll call you.
Raj's
it'll be after
report
1:30.
on the you know, what's going on in India. I think Raj and I are working on something to bring together kind of a program that will bring, you know, how people are coping with the coronavirus from a political perspective around the world. So in that context, what is happening in Turkey is that I am going to, you know, I guess, accept and, you know, appreciate the analysis that was made for South Korea as a fascist state. And I can extend exactly the same thing for Turkey. And this has given tremendous opportunity to the government to repress the people and use it for further attacks. The government few weeks ago when this happened, first of all, it came from the interior minister, not the health minister, that anybody who was going to share information that was not the official truth, then they would be prosecuted and they would be punished. This came in automatically from the government. And since then, there is, I believe, at the moment, 150 people who are under investigation for putting coronavirus-related information on their social media sites. There are several people who have been detained. No, I'm sorry, I said several. The last I heard, this was at the end of last week, it was more than about 30 people who had been detained by the police because they shared information. Now, as far as I can tell, there's like about 3 journalists who have been detained because they complained that the government had not taken the precaution. And one of the things that Turkey is now the place where corona spread is the fastest in the world, and there are reasons for this. First of all, having the Muslim mind, the government and the rest of the people did not take this pandemic seriously. They even, I can quote you, the professors at the universities came out saying that the DNA of Turks are much different than the rest of the world. So this virus is not going to affect them. The professors, on record saying that, oh, we may see 10, okay, give it 20, but there's not going to be more than 20 cases around the country. Now, the latest figures are that there are thousands and thousands of people affected. I think over 73 who have died, but these are just the numbers that the government selects or gives out because they are under pressure. The the doctors' chamber of physicians came out saying the numbers that the government is giving has nothing to do with what we are seeing. So that's what's happening, and it's really very, very troublesome. So anyway, I'll
Okay.
if there are questions, I'll go.
Thank you, Mehmet. You used up 2 minutes. Okay, thanks. Who wants to go next? Anybody else who wants to say something? Well, we have a real pause here.
May I just correct something I said?
Yes, go ahead.
Number of deaths.
You can take another 2 minutes if you like, because nobody raised that.
Just a number of deaths. I said 73. That was for one day. The total number of deaths today is 574. So let me just give you one example of how this spread in Turkey. First of all, Turkey is a tourist place, and so they refuse to close the borders. That's one thing. But this is now the pilgrimage season, where people in tens of thousands went to Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and when they came back, a few were tested, and the positive rate for this thing was like nearly half. So, but the pilgrims, having an Islamic government in the government, refused to go to the quarantine areas. They said, what is this stupid thing about this, isolating us? We want to go back home. There were actually in Istanbul and Konya, there were clashes between the pilgrims and the police who wanted to put them under quarantine. But the government allowed tens of thousands of these to go back to their home without measuring their, the fever or, putting them into quarantine. And one pilgrim alone infected 570 people, and several of his, immediate family, and several people of this, his surrounding have died because he was, communicating the disease. So, but the government would not stop them because it's voting base. So it doesn't want to, inconvenience them. But the result is open.
Okay, thank you. So we're 7 minutes, 8 minutes before. It's 11:50 right now. We still have 40 minutes to go, and we can end early if everybody has feels that way. But we have 40 minutes. So who wants to go next? Rich, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
I can speak on my other phone now. I think I'm getting a clear signal through. Is that right?
Yeah, get a little bit louder.
Okay.
Get
And also, that
mouth
means
close.
I've taken the phone where you're talking back to me away from my ear, and my wife's listening to it. I can't get the volume up. I want to say one thing technical first before I start. That I'm going to finish what I started about half an hour ago or something, and then had to hang up. So
Raise your volume.
I've been listening to everything
Speak
that's
louder.
and
You should speak louder.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
A little better,
Is that
yes.
better?
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if it's loud enough now.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying anything.
Yeah, he said, yeah.
Okay, well, I can't hear that. So my point is I can't really hear what I'm saying. I'm only talking to myself, and my wife is following, but it's so about, I'm going to say about a third of the way into the program, or like a half an hour into the program, something roughly, I don't know. My volume, well, first of all, I got knocked out. I got knocked out about 4 or 5 times now, and then at the top it'll say reconnecting. Sooner or later it'll come back in. I think Emmett is aware of that because he can tell when I'm coming in and out, I think. So my problem is the first time that happened, this happened about a week or two, but the first time this happened this time, when it came back on, my volume dropped about in half, so I could barely hear it. And before, when it was loud, it was like the phone was on speakerphone or something, I don't know. But now it's not. So now it's really hard to hear. And when I've got it in my ear, my wife is a foot or two away, gets closer, and then she still can't hear well. So that's a practical issue. Now, in terms of content and what's going on in the neighborhood, I actually just, since she said this, but let me start it. A couple of days ago, Saturday morning, she wanted to go shopping early in the morning, only time in our nearby pharmacy, right, that she could find 2 big packages of toilet paper. So that, any other day they're out of 2 hours of when they, no. Yeah,
Safeway.
2 hours, Safeway. Anyway, the bottom line is that she had a 2-hour window to get up there. She goes out and stands. She doesn't drive, so she's waiting for the bus. The bus doesn't come, so she calls in the transit and really doesn't get hardly a response. Finally, some kind of message says there might be 90 minutes. This is back to that earlier conversation.
And it never showed up.
Yeah, and it never did show up. So we got Nicole and anyway, intended to get breakfast, go shopping for food. So what I'm saying is, on top of what following what was said before an hour ago or so, is the bus system, as far as I'm concerned, by most people, unless they write it or a family or a close person writes it and they hear the stories, is absolutely essential when you can't do anything except go shop for food and go to the doctor. Only then, while the conditions we were saying, it's not right. It should be better organized, much more convenient, user-friendly, and it's not. And in fact, as they have trouble, they shut it down. The emphasis.
Rich, you have used up your time.
You used up your time, Rich.
Okay, I'm going to say one more thing. It's okay, but this is the whole point. There's one bus driver they see hundreds of bus drivers. That's it. It only takes a few to show how vulnerable the drivers are in the whole system. They can't go without driving. And they get way more contact with people that have potentially coronavirus. And many of them do, because they walk right by the place. Not everybody's totally stands up. That's done.
Thank you, Rich. We're going to go to Gene.
Yes, thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody for participating. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just put something in the chat about please send, if everybody would please send me an email with your email address, your name, and your telephone so that we can keep this group together, and hopefully, as Alan said, we can expand it outwards in terms of inviting more people to join us. Because I think this discussion is valuable not only for us as individuals, but as we all talked about, there's a lot going on there we need to keep aware of and keep talking about. And so this will give us a way to stay in touch in a better way. And I will share this with other people in the working group that's doing the mechanics of all this. So we want to just keep this group going and expand it. That's all. Thanks. And thanks, everybody.
Okay. Guru Jivan has raised his hand, so he's next. Thank you, Gene. I'm going to unmute you. Oh, you have to unmute yourself, Guru Jivan.
I see.
Okay. Okay.
I had completely forgotten, but following on the Kaiser thread, I believe that they were threatening to fire any nurse who brought their own protective equipment, because the protective equipment that they were handing out was being not used in terms of like actual infectious disease science. It was, they weren't giving proper equipment, and there's a lot of labor unrest with the CNA right now. I'm not up on the latest thing, but that's also something to follow up on for folks.
Thank you. Who's next? Okay, we have a pause here. Anybody wants to say something, because we're approaching 12. And if people have spoken all they want to speak, we can end the session earlier. Ian, what do you say? Since, go ahead, Gene.
Unmute. No, I think this has been very successful. And I think if we don't have more to say, we can just get back and ponder what we've said so far and think about it, and definitely come back next time. Alan's going to be talking, and that's going to be particularly good, I think. So.
And Rich, you got to do something about your joining us, because twice in a row you had difficulties. Sort this out somehow with somebody. I think Mehmet perhaps can give you some help. Mehmet?
Yeah, I'd like to work with Rich maybe offline when we are done, and you know, maybe set up a time and we'll go over the things you can do and you know, what our limitations are.
Okay, I'm able to get connected. I wanted you to notice that on a line where it says everyone, there's 3 dots at the end of that line, and you have the option to click on that and save the chat.
Yeah, it's being recorded by, it's being, oh, the chat.
Right, I'm saying that that's another option, that save the chat. You can see what has been posted into chat line, into the chat box.
It ends up in the Zoom folder on your computer under Documents, at least on a PC. I don't know where it goes on a Mac.
Thanks.
Okay, so shall we end the session? Is everybody in favor of say aye?
Let's all think for a moment.
Aye.
I think there's a polling also. Next time we'll experiment with that until you know, until then I'll find out how it works. So we'll.
I just like to give people time to think about whether they want to go over something and bring it up.
Thank you, Raj, for hosting. Thank you, Mehmet, for doing the technical support.
Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you. We just had a new guest just come in.
So Alan, by the way, it's working this time better for
Participant. The participant is new, and we wanted to say who it was and what.
Yeah, I guess, but McFadden. We just a new participant joined us.
Yes,
Okay.
hello. I only saw this email about this recently, and I thought I would listen in.
Yeah, well, welcome, and we love for you to join. But we are just about to finish the session.
Yeah,
Well, maybe he has something to say.
Yeah.
If you have something to say, please say. We will wait.
I really called in to listen because I'm interested in other
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so this was a good session, McFadden. What's your first name? I assume that's your last name.
James.
Jim?
Yeah, James McFadden.
James, okay. Hi, James. So, oh, Alan, I just want to let you know the reason my system is working better today is because I'm closer to the box, the
router,
the modem that brings in the service to me. So Mehmet and I tested out yesterday with this, and it's working better because of that, I think.
You sound wonderful for a change.
Well,
your volume, you know, for expression.
Thank you. It's a great compliment coming from you.
Well, it's not a compliment. It's a thank you very much for getting to where we can understand what you're saying without a
Yep.
problem.
Well, I also have a habit of speaking low, starting high, going down low.
No,
You
but you're
remember-
doing wonderfully today, so we
Okay.
really appreciate it.
Much encouraged, comrade.
Good.
Okay, so folks, tune in next week at 10:30 when Alan Miller will be presenting, and that is
The breathtaking crash of 2020.
yeah. And
Oh,
that,
also, I have posted the link, the internet link to the statement by Maduro is what it is.
okay,
So
Alan, you want to
can
just
copy-
give a brief? Sorry.
You can copy it off that chat list. It's toward the end of that chat
Okay.
report.
Alan, you want to give a brief description of what you're going to do next Sunday?
Talking about the economic crisis, the economic aspect of what's going on, what's actually happening, some different perspectives about why it's happening, a little bit about the bailout that's was recently passed, the stimulus bailout bill, and some ideas about looking ahead to what we might see in the future. Also want to emphasize that people should bring their ideas too. It's not just, this should be a discussion and contributions from everybody.
Okay, so Rich Johnson wanted to raise his hand again, but Gene, you have, your hand is also raised. Did you intend to say something?
It's lowered.
Okay,
Not yet. Do it again. Oh, there it goes.
yeah, and Rich, do you want to say something? Rich Johnson. I guess not.
This is McFadden. There is something I would like to add about
Okay,
next year. There's one of the people that I know and have been following. It's a guy by the name of Jack Rasmus. He writes often for Counterpunch, and he has he's written quite a bit about this. And so if somebody wanted to do a little homework ahead of time, that would be look up his name, Jack Rasmus. He's an economist, socialist.
Yeah.
And,
We're familiar with his name. He's spoken in our forum before. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I wanted to say about the bailouts, our left is organized, is putting up postings to complain about the bailouts to the owning class. You know, the owning class is calling for the bailouts and there's been money allotted to it. But the thing is, those are not bailouts, and I don't like the leftish calling them bailout in their language as they report to us about it. They have to say this is not a bailout, it's a donation or whatever they're going to call it instead. Okay.
Okay. So that's it then. Until next Sunday when we'll meet again. Karen, I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
And anything any of us can do for you, let us know. I assume that your food and other things are provided. You're reasonable with that?
Yeah, that's all
We are a
good.
community.
Karen, when you get well, you will be, what are they, a unicorn. You know, you could go any place, do anything.
I know. The only thing is, like, the doctor told me they won't even know whether you're immune once.
Right.
Well, I think you will gain immunity at that point.
Well, I'm not asking you. We're asking experience, and we're asking doctors. Your people's belief about this system is not sufficient.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
Okay,
Gene, I'm going to close it with your permission. Is that okay? And ready to quit?
Absolutely. Always glad to close the
So
meeting.
see you next Sunday. And thanks,
Okay.
special
Thanks
thanks
to
to
everybody.
Mehmet, who is the brain behind the success today.
Live,
Brilliant.
all live.
Brilliant.
Yes, and
Tell
he's
the best
very unassuming, but I know Mehmet has got the real brains. I just pretend to have.
No.
Okay.
Okay, Have
See
a
you
nice
next
one,
Monday.
everybody.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.